Sean Themea, the Chief of Staff with Young Americans for Liberty, YAL. YALiberty.org is their website. YALiberty is their Twitter handle. And his is Liberty Sean, spelled S-E-A-N. Sean Themea is with us. Sean, welcome to the program. If I'm reading this right, you are of the opinion that Joe Biden's proposal that basically we go into people's neighborhoods and make vaccines available to them if they want is some kind of big government overreach. I get it that the Republicans are all, pushing this idea that you shouldn't get vaccinated because they want more people to get sick and die in the hopes that it'll crash the economy, in the hopes that that'll help them in the 2022 and 2024 election. Are you just going along with the Republicans on this, or is there some reason why you and libertarians think more Americans should die?
Well, Tom, great to be here. I reject the premise that we think more people should die. I think that especially after you've seen the government at all levels mismanage the response to this pandemic, the idea of the federal government coming and knocking at your door and telling you that you should get the vaccine is actually going to deter those target populations from actually getting the vaccine.
How do you know that, number one? And number two, how can you say it's mismanaged when you've got independent sources saying that at least 300,000 deaths did not happen as a result over the last 6 months as a result of the vaccination program that Donald Trump started and Joe Biden implemented? It's working. We've got we've got one of the lowest infection and death rates in the world because we're one of the most vaccinated countries in the world.
Well, Tom, I think you look back at 2020, and if you're a working American, I think it's easy to mistrust the government. I'm talking about the government's response, Tom. I'm talking about you've got the same government telling you that you should go out and get the vaccine. It's the same government that put people in a box to be essential or non-essential, made it illegal for working class people to put food on the table, walked back on whether or not we should wear masks. I think it's very logical for people to not trust the government. And I think, honestly, that's the American thing to do. I'm speaking to you as a vaccinated American, Tom. I think people should get the vaccine, but I also think it's their choice. And the government coming in and coercing people or using you must get this instead of recommending it, I think that's going to ultimately deter our shared goal.
I think it's just tragic, Sean, if I may speak candidly, that you are trying to peddle this idea that we should hate or fear or distrust a government that, I get it that there are things that the government doesn't do right, and there's a lot of problems. There's no shortage of that, but that, this is a government of we the people. And I get it that libertarians prefer oligarchy, that you're not fans of democracy. You would really rather have the billionaires running the country. But it just seems so destructive. The sales pitch that you're out here promoting, that our government should not be doing anything to get people vaccinated, is going to kill people. And if I were you, I would not be able to sleep at night knowing that there are families who are, sitting around watching dad or grandpa, or hey, now with the Delta variant, 18-year-old little Johnny or Joni dying of COVID. How do you deal with that kind of responsibility?
Here, Tom, is the issue of privacy. Look, I agree with the ACLU. We got to be very cautious when it comes to giving the government our personal data. And going back to what we're here to talk about, Biden's proposal to get folks at the front door collecting information, potentially, keeping a list of whether or not you got your shot.
No, this program is to go to people, to go to people's homes and say, to knock on doors and say, if you're not vaccinated, we can make that happen. Would you like it? What's wrong with that?
I think it's the wrong approach. I think that you're going to actually deter those people from getting the vaccine because people don't trust the government.
No, libertarians don't trust the government. It's a small set of right-wing cranks, Sean.
The FDA, where, things they get approved, they get taken off the shelves. I think that the best step forward is the government at all levels came forth and said, hey, we take accountability for the mistakes and the mismanagement we made in this pandemic, that they respect people's choices, and then go in and maybe promote the benefits of the vaccine. All we've seen thus far from government, from governor's mansions to mayor's halls to the federal government, is pretty much saying if you don't get the vaccine, if you don't put on the mask, if you don't stay in your house, then you're going to kill grandma. And, by George,
and you are, Sean,
to push back on that.
You are. 600,000 Americans are dead. 400 friggin' thousand people are dead. And you're pushing a narrative that is going to kill more Americans.
Tom, level with me. We don't want anyone to die, but the United Nations has told us that 100 million people are going to starve because of these lockdowns.
We're not talking about starvation, and we're not talking about lockdowns. We're talking about the government, the federal government, giving money to the states or doing it themselves. This is, as far as I know, this is all entirely conceptual at this point. But basically going out to people and saying, hey, if you'd like to get a vaccine, we can make that happen. I mean, this should not be controversial. I was like 7 years old when in elementary school when they passed out sugar cubes with a polio vaccine. It was no big deal. They literally came into our neighborhood with a truck filled with vaccine, put these drops on the sugar cubes, and we all took them. It was, and guess what? We wiped out polio. We don't have polio anymore. When my parents were growing up, my wife's grandmother had polio. She only had one arm that worked her whole entire life. It was vaccine that helped America. And here you are now telling people, oh, yeah, no, it's fine. We should just, government shouldn't be doing this. You should just get sick and die. Or get sick. One-third of men who get COVID,
Look,
even mild cases of COVID, end up with...
I'm anti-mandate, and I'm anti the government potentially overstepping into their privacy rights on Americans and coercing folks. I think that this whole thing could have looked different.
There is nothing coercive.
You want people to take the vaccine, you get the government at all levels to accept accountability that they mismanage the
Sean,
response.
this is a huge... No, stop for a second, Sean. Talking over each other is not going to do any good here. Nobody can hear what either one of us is saying. There's number one, this is not coercive. This is, hey, this is available to you. But number two, I'm in favor of making it coercive. I think that if Macron is giving a speech right now in France in which he's in all probability announcing that they're going for vaccine passports in France. They've already done it in Israel. They're doing it in countries around the world, saying, hey, if you want to get into a restaurant, if you want to get into a sporting event, you have to prove that you're vaccinated because the rest of us don't want to die because you're an idiot. So I'm actually in favor of more government action on this, and frankly, some rather substantial government action on this. But this idea that we should be doing nothing, or we should be condemning government for trying to save lives is bizarre.
Well, I suppose we agree to disagree on what the role of government should be in this case, but I agree with the ACLU on the passports, especially if they're digitized, right? If Donald Trump was still president, I'm sure you wouldn't want the personal data of potentially undocumented immigrants from these vaccine passports getting in the hands of ICE. You probably don't want it under Joe Biden either. I think that any list that the government takes,
Sean, nobody's suggesting, right now, when you get a vaccine, they don't ask they don't ask anything other than your name and address, basically. Again, this is a red herring.
That could be enough.
These straw man arguments. So what? Okay, let's just wrap this up. We're talking with Sean Themea, the Chief of Staff with Young Americans for Liberty, yaliberty.org, and YA Liberty on Twitter, or Liberty Sean, SEAN. So what is the approach? I realize this. Where I'm going with this. What is the appropriate role of government during a pandemic? I mean, George Washington ordered people to get vaccinated when there was a smallpox epidemic going on during the Revolutionary War. He ordered it. Right now, schools require you to prove that you've been vaccinated against measles and a few other diseases in order to go to school all across America. Are you suggesting that none of that should be the case, that it should all entirely be voluntary, that we should no longer have vaccination mandates in our schools?
I'm suggesting that if you're going to convince unvaccinated Americans to get vaccinated, it's going to come from their Rotary clubs, it's going to come from their family, but most importantly, it's going to come from a government that people see has integrity.
I don't see how my family or my Rotary club is going to get a vaccine in my arm,
Sean. In the last year and a half, Tom, you told me you didn't want to talk over each other. In the last year and a half, you've seen Fauci flip-flop. You've seen people not trust the Trump administration nor the Biden administration.
Fauci flip-flop.
I'd like the government to walk back, accept responsibility that they haven't been in integrity with the American people, and then maybe we can press a reset button and all get past this.
Well, clearly
but the idea of Biden sending folks to the door is not going to work. You're going to get more rigorously unvaccinated people.
Yeah, well, clearly the Trump administration wasn't dealing honestly with people, which is why we had 600,000 deaths. Okay, Sean, we will agree to disagree. It's good talking with you. Sean Themea, Chief of Staff with Young Americans for Liberty, yaliberty.org, YA Liberty on Twitter, and Liberty Sean, SEAN.